Hey, my man, how are you? Yeah, man. Always excited for DBD.
Happy to hear that. Well, that being said, let's jump right on in, shall we? And I'll let them know that we are good to go as we do have all the builds ready and set. We are started off today with some Wretched Shop. So, gonna be interesting to see what killers these teams decide to bring, as Travesty is up first, so they'll be setting the tone for this series. What do you think? If you had to guess what killers they're gonna bring today, what would be your thoughts?
Wretched. Um, First two that come to mind are like Huntress and Slinger.
I don't hear you at all on the stream. It's still just playing the music.
Oh, okay. Now you should be able to. I think I may have had it muted for a second, so it should be good now, as I do see the audio input. So my mistake on that one.
Oh, good.
I'm testing out a few new things with Stream Elements over Streamlabs, so I had to reset everything, so we should be good. But with that being said, for those who did not hear, welcome back to Champions of the Fog, and I'm joined today by j0k. So, hello, and we have Travesty versus Deadheads today, and we're starting off game number 1 on the Wretched Shop with Travesty as the killer. So, thank you guys for being patient with me as I test out some new streaming software. Got some insight on Stream Elements, decided to try it out, and here we are. So, hopefully everything goes well, fingers crossed. But we are jumping right on in, so it won't take too much longer now before we find out what Travesty's bringing to the table. But what's your guess, j0k?
Huntress and Slinger are the first two that come to my mind.
Huntress or Slinger on this map? There definitely are some good positions that can be taken on the map with the right RNG, though I do fear that it could be a little bit dicey at times. That being said, initial build check looks good. Let's jump right on in to some nurse.
Swinging with the nurse.
I mean, as we said before, I will say again, game 1 really does set the tone for the entire series. So it makes sense for them to bring out an S-tier killer, try and get an early lead, especially the Sunday team having less games to play because there are less teams. So bringing out the S-tiers now makes a lot of sense. Would not be surprised if we also see some Spirit as well.
They're so far not really finding anyone. Saw some scratch marks, but then, as I say that, we have our first chase here with the Kate.
Yeah, so it looks like the nurse was tracking the scratch mark for quite a while, and Kate was giving them quite the go-around. But at this point in time, looks like nurse has found not just one, but 2 survivors, and gets 2 pretty good back-to-back hits. So what are you thinking so far? We see some pretty good play from the nurse thus far, obviously losing some distance on that chase there. It seems like a pretty good start, all things considered. It'd be even better if they get the down here, but just barely whiff.
The unfortunate whiff there. That had they connected there, it would have been so much earlier.
Yep, I just saw the chat. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like I said, adding some new things here and there, so apologies about that. But let me add the blocker. We should be good to go. So, j0k, what are your thoughts so far on this chase?
So far, this Leon's really doing a good job of keeping them busy. That lasted, I want to say almost a minute and a half, roughly 2 minutes, and that's a lot of pressure that the survivors should hopefully have on those gens.
Yeah.
And it basically almost wasted the entire corrupt.
Did pretty much burn that entire corrupt intervention. We did see Ruin also go off there. And with that being said, it's going to be interesting to see what these survivors are going to be able to do at this point in time, as they have reset, and I'm surprised not to see more gens go off in that moment.
Yeah, it seemed a bit odd. It could have been maybe the survivors were trying to see about any potential 4 gens or 3 gens or anything like that. It could have also just been that maybe their strategy was to hide out the corrupt.
Yeah, that is a true, you know, a big thing that a lot of teams are doing as of recent, where they are waiting on Corrupt. At the same time, you don't really want to wait out while someone's already in chase. We saw Kate get hit very early on. We saw Leon then go into a pretty significant 1 to 2 minute chase as well. So, honestly, I think that, you know, the survivors were, I don't know, maybe hunting Ruin during that time instead of being on gens would be my only thought there.
That's also a good point. It could have been that as well.
With that being said, we do see our second hook on the Leon now. That does mean that we do have a survivor on death hook as we speak, which is quite significant. But we do see that second gen pop off as well. I wonder if Spooky Joe's play here is to just get that one survivor out and keep this 3-gen. We do see that really tight 3-gen right here. Pretty much all within the line of sight of the hook, so no reason for Nurse to leave this area, to say the least.
That is such a nasty 3-gen. And the fact that they can literally continue to get pop value even on the middle gen, if they were to progress it a little bit, it's going to be rough for the survivors for this one.
Yeah, the only thing that would have been better for the Nurse at this point would have been if Ruin had still been up at this point in time, but the survivors are starting to try and harass the Nurse bit by bit, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but I know that I have, that it does appear that the Leon's second stage timer has been slowed down quite significantly, suggesting that they are running camaraderie.
Yep, I was actually just about to make mention of that as well, as to say, this Leon's been on the hook for a while.
Yeah, so I think that is pretty indicative of camaraderie, and to see that it still has not really gone down all too quick, it would suggest another survivor is nearby to try and go for that unhook. And though Spooky Joe here might want to, you know, slow down the game by trying to keep this 3-gen, it looks like these survivors have been sneaking behind their back and have been slowly but surely getting these gens done, so definitely an uncomfortable position for them to be in.
It was a bit of a weird position for sure, because while that happened, you had another gen pop, and then they were also able to get the safe unhook, and as we're seeing now, this gen is nearly complete. So a lot of pressure put on the survivors now, that the pressure is now on this Nurse to try to either get someone out, or to just try to slug.
Yeah, I mean, in this situation, it's going to be really rough for the Nurse to come back here, as it takes 0.3% off a gen per second on a dry kick like that. So that gen on that far side is going to be regressing really, really slowly. But Nurse was able to find a survivor again. It looks like it is the Leon. On one end, this is a good chase because it does mean the Leon might get out of the game. On the other hand, it is a possibility that this could just be a loss of points. If they are to hook Leon and no one else, that's only 4 additional points. Whereas if they get someone else and that last gen pops off, at the very least then they are able to get some additional points off of them. But good grab on the Leon. We will see them go up on hook, and now Spooky Joe has to make a choice. Go back to 3-gen, try and pop the gen, or pop the gen that's closest to them.
Pop the one closest to them.
Yeah, so I think that was a pretty good heads-up plays there. I am a little bit concerned about that gen that Dwight was on earlier. I do think that it's probably the most likely one to pop off, since it probably didn't see a lot of regression, though. Surprisingly enough, looks like it has not been finished yet.
I think it's close, though.
It is pretty close, so, you know, if survivors play smart and don't give this Nurse a quick down, that could result in them being able to get that last gen and get some escapes, but looks like Travesty will go down here.
Yeah, unfortunate. As you say that, they get the quick down, and now they have another pop value here, and then on top of that, it's you know, you only have 2 people left, and you're still at 2 gens. Well, as I say that, of course one pops.
Yeah, but the last 2 gens beside that is 3-gen are not really well progressed, so the survivors are going to have to do something here, and unfortunately with the hook placement, it really does put the Nurse into a really good power position, allowing her to, you know, leave them on hook injure survivors, go for downs, potential trades, which just means that more pop plays are going to come in. But the nurse does whiff on that hit, and that could be pretty significant. If they had not missed, that would have resulted in a 1-for-1 trade, but now they're going to have to make a choice, and it looks like they will go for the Nia instead of Dwight.
It's interesting so far because first we saw at the beginning of the game Nurse was in a really strong position, and then now, and then it swung over to the survivors for a little bit, and then now we're stuck here at 1 gen with the 3 gen that we noted to earlier, and now the hand is back at the killer, and now it's up to the killer to try to finish this one out.
Yeah, I am surprised that the survivors didn't attempt to force out that gen that the Dwight was working on sooner, because that would have been a huge play for them to break this 3 gen. Leave that last one on the, shack side available and waiting, but looks like Nurse here is going to face camp, which honestly, they're able to see the gen on the left, they can hear the gen on the right, they can hear the gen to the left of them, so they pretty much can just sit here at this hook and call it a day.
And we bring it up again because of how tight this 3 gen is. It's such a strong position that the killer is in right now, as you noted, and it's like you said, it's really tough for the survivors right now because they have to try to pressure 2 different gens at the same time. But as of right now, it's only 2 people, 1 on hook, so they have to make a play.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they attempt to do. It's also possible they might just try and find Hatch and try and get a escape, but we see 2 people on the gen back there, and they're just gonna have to make a decision, but we do see 8 seconds off that gen, and second stage has been hit there on the hook, so that then puts the nurse in prime position to kill off another survivor as the Kate goes down.
Interesting choice to double up on the gen. I understand wanting to get it done as quickly as possible, of course, but I think here the best thing that they could have done is push the 2 gens. However, it's extremely difficult because of where the hook is right at this moment, because if they had chosen maybe another hook, then it could have probably been a better play for the 2 gens, but it's just, you're hooked into 3 gen, the killer's in such a strong spot.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically speaking, the best choice was to actually go to that gen there, try and make the nurse to, force the nurse to make a choice and hope that she isn't able to get a quick successive down. As you saw there, unfortunately, ended up in a 1-for-1 trade, so the survivors really didn't gain much, if any, value in that moment.
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of sort of in like a rinse-repeat here kind of situation. Go for a trade, try to take the killer's attention, make them make a choice on whether or not they, want to just stay here, base camp them, or, try to push them off the gen, and then just kind of, like I said, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, I think in this instance, if I'm these survivors, I think honestly looking for Hatch might be the smart play. At least that way you can try and set up for a 1-man escape and get some points back. But realistically speaking, even that is going to not exactly grant you the best value in the world. I imagine they really want to get this last gen done, because if they get the last gen done, that's 6 points, versus if you get just 1 survivor out, it's only 3 points. So realistically speaking, might be better off trying to get that last gen, as we do see it progressing in the background there.
Yeah. Such a nice blinks by this nurse as well. They've had a few whiffs, but the nurse has been playing really well, and just such a strong 3 gen that it's just, like you said, it makes the survivors' lives run out difficult, because they basically have to play for the hatch. As much as they may want the point and to try to get those extra points for the last gen, it almost seems like the only viable play right now is to get the 1-man out with the hatch.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and if in the instance they get that, they'll be able to at least claim some points and rob the nurse of some as well, as right now Dwight has only been on hook once, while Nia is currently on death hook. So best case scenario would be that the nurse goes for Nia, but the nurse has other plans, as we do see Dwight narrowly dodging a hit there.
Some good fight. However, unfortunately, goes down shortly after. And smart play by the nurse here to slug, try to get the 4K.
I imagine they're going to attempt to slug for the 4K. I mean, at the end of the day, if they are not able to get the Nia, that's a loss of 3 points in regards to, you know, Lion Survivors get 3 points on escape, but also an additional loss of 4 points for the hook. So we'll be interested to see what she decides to do if she just kind of waits this out, as she has about 3 minutes 30 seconds, give or take, to let the Dwight slug out in this moment before he does bleed out.
And the other big thing too is they need to keep that in mind, because if the survivor bleeds out, they get no points.
Yeah, that is a fair point, but in the meanwhile, I think Nurse will probably venture out, try and look for Hatch, and now that she's identified where it is, we'll probably end up hooking the Dwight and then sitting on it in the meanwhile.
Yep. It's extremely unfortunate that, for the survivors at least, that the Nurse found the Hatch there.
Yeah, but
It's going to be interesting to see if they can get the Dwight to a close enough hook, though.
I mean, keep in mind that Dwight is only on first hook as of right now, so realistically speaking, he has a while, as far as animations are concerned, before he's able to die. So I think the smart play here is hook the Dwight, go on over, and if Nia goes for the unhook, that then is additional potential points for you, right? So I think that might be the right course of action. And worst comes to worst, if the Nia doesn't get Hatch, then she can make an attempt at the escape, but I don't think it's really going to result in anything significant.
Sadly, I don't think so either.
And we see the Dwight just barely getting off her shoulder, but I don't think it's going to get all too far, as he goes pretty much immediately back down.
Rest in peace, Dwight there, man. Feels bad.
I mean, any stump time on killers like Nurse, like Blight, you know, it's not exactly going to gain you all too much distance, as they'll be on top of you right then and there.
Ability killers is just such a boon for them, because they're just able to just gain the distance back. And now we play the waiting game.
Yep, at this point, you know, Travesty, who is Dwight, will have to make a decision whether or not they just suicide out or see if maybe they might want to go for an unhook. Realistically speaking, I think the unhook is a dangerous play, and we do see Travesty with that progression, and now it leaves the Nia for an attempted escape with the exit gates. But with that being said, you know, depending on the exit gate placement, it's going to be really difficult for them to evade this Nurse.
Yeah, I would agree, and they're decent spawn apart. So it's a potential for the Nia here to get out. It's a bit of a 50-50, but it's their best shot.
Yeah, but if you look there, the Nurse can see that from pretty far away, and it's probably going to try and line up both exit gates. So as much as they have some decent distance, A, it's a Nurse, B, I think even then it's going to be hard-pressed for them to, you know, get an escape at this point. They would have to do a silent open, which, as we do hear that noise notification at the exit gate, would suggest no way out.
Yep. No way out is such a good perk as well.
I mean, it's definitely seeing a lot more usage now with its most recent buff, and definitely seeing a good amount of usage in comp for killers that feel pretty comfortable about their, you know, beginning and mid-game chases. But as we see this chase go on, it really comes down to whether or not the Nurse is going to get her or EGC, and looks like Nurse will claim her prize and put Nia onto the final hook.
Good game by the Nurse. That 3-gen, it's one of the tighter 3-gens that you could arguably ask for on this map.
I agree. With that being said, that there will result in 14 points for Deadheads and 44 points for Travesty. So a 30-point game going into game number 2, you know, definitely not insurmountable odds, but will be difficult to, you know, get back their potential lead going into game 2 and game 3.
Right, and then now this leads us to kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier. You know, do Deadheads now in response to the Nurse game? Do they bring out an S tier killer of their own? I'm pretty sure they still have S tier killers games at their disposal. So I think it's almost likely, if not guaranteed, that we see either a nurse or a spirit or a blight in response to this to try to bring it back.
Yeah, no, it would make sense to me, realistically speaking, in these moments, because you kind of need to apply a lot of good pressure. Otherwise, you do risk, a survivor escaping, and that could be a huge loss of points depending on the hook states that we see. So I think that you need to probably maybe bring out Nurse, maybe bring out Spirit. Blight's okay-ish with this map. There are a few spots that are a bit hard for a Blight to work with, though.
True, and you could even... I say this with a caveat, of course, because some people might feel, comfortable or practiced on a certain map with a certain killer, and they feel confident with it, and it might be not necessarily a niche killer, but say like an A tier or B tier killer, and at that point it's like, okay, you now have to weigh the options in your head. If you're deadheads, it's like, do we continue with the rebuttal of S tier killer, or has someone, whoever their killer is, feel confident, they've been practicing certain killer on this map or whatever, they want to go for it, and they feel that that's their best move. Throw the opposing survivors for a loop, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that is a fair point. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, it won't be too much longer now until we do see what Deadheads brings to the table. But with that being said, what would be your best guess here on killer? I'm thinking probably Spirit. I do think that more and more people are probably going to be running Spirit before the update comes through. But I believe Giraffe has an update for us.
Yes, I was gonna let you know that you might want to turn the game down just a little bit.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate the heads up there.
No problem.
As mentioned before, we are trying out some new streaming software, so I have to, set up all the levels again, as didn't have a chance to go through a full stream yet on Streamlabs. But I have to say, so far, I wasn't sold on it within this last year, wanted to use Streamlabs for the year, and pretty much at that point, and then someone kind of showed me Stream Elements and what it could do, and I was like, okay, let's try Stream Elements, and so far, I'm pretty happy, I cannot complain. But, so Joker, I know over the last day or so, myself as well as others have talked about some of the boon totem changes, as well as built to last, as far as we are aware, not being changed from the PTB. What are your thoughts on those perks?
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't seen or read up on all of them. I know a few of them, but from what I've seen, it's interesting. The built to last, I guess you could call it mega buff. It's honestly weird in my opinion. Like, I felt like built to last was in a solid spot where as it stands right now. That's a lot of extra value with that additional change, and with the boons. I think it just adds an extra element to the game that, I don't know, I think it'll be interesting. I think it adds just an extra thing to keep in track of, almost. Like, it adds more potential tact to the game, almost.
Yeah, no, I agree. And kind of thinking about, Boon Tone specifically, I don't know. I feel like the nerf, quote-unquote, to Boon Totems was too little. They probably could have gone a whole lot farther in ensuring that when a survivor blesses a totem and a killer breaks it, that they are not able to reapply it with little to no issue. I still believe, and I know some people will disagree, that when a killer snuffs out a totem, they should probably be able to break it, reducing that resource and making some risk involved by using boon totems. Right now, there really is no real risk. It is all reward.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. I feel like that they probably could have tweaked it just a little bit more. Who knows? They might tweak it a little bit more. We don't know, but I would have to agree with you there.
Yeah, as far as built to last, the biggest thing is in comp, it's not actually going to be too significant outside of medkit usage. Still, I do believe that. I still believe that it is a bit too strong in comp, even with just yellow medkits and yellow add-ons, because it can result in upwards of 5 heals, which, you know, if teams are playing smart, can be pretty useful. As far as pubs is concerned, I mean, the toolboxes are just going to be insane. I think as far as, like, my go-to build for pubs, it's probably going to involve Build to Last, Streetwise, and Commodious Toolbox.
Yeah. I could definitely see that in pubs for sure. You have 4 people with that build and say like a brand new part on top of that. Oh, rest in peace, generators, man.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. So I'm wondering if we do see any more tweaks to any of the buff perks or nerfed killers or even buffed killers going into live. Obviously, all we know so far is boon totems, and that's about it.
Yeah, it'll be. I'm. It's going to be definitely interesting how they choose to kind of go about it on the official release, and I imagine once it gets released, maybe after some time, it'll probably get adjusted to some degree after some more feedback from the rest of the community outside of the PCB, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Gil, can you quickly check Travesty chat for me?
Yeah, currently reading over it. Yeah, as long as it is the same owner, we should be fine.
Okay, I think it's just a typo then because his ID says Jack, but now it says Jake.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, just making some confirmations on DBD IDs. You know, when we see a new name, we cross-check the DBD IDs, we go, wait 1 second. So, always good to double, triple check, make sure everything's kosher, but we should be good to go. And with that, we'll be getting the match started up here momentarily. So, with everything going on, with, you know, Survivor perks getting buffed, what things are you most excited for with the mid-chapter update?
I will admit I'm always just excited for new content. I feel like most people can agree there. It's just new things. Like, yes, we wish the devs could like fix things that are currently in the game already and things that a lot of people might view as like, you know, an issue or a bug or whatever you want to say. It's always cool, at least in my mind, to see new like new things added to the game, either whether it be an element to the game like we see with the boon totems, or changes to perks, whether it be a popular or, you know, negative view from the community, or just, you know, just new killers, new survivors, new play styles, all that stuff. To me that's pretty cool. I've always liked that.
And I agree, so it'll be interesting to see, and it's also interesting to think that once we receive the mid-chapter update come the 19th, we're only a month and a half away from our next update, so it does raise the question, are we going to get another survivor, another killer, maybe both, you know, that soon after? So as I mentioned before, and I kind of mentioned again, I'd actually really like for Behavior to continue making chapters than making paragraphs rather than chapters, where they only release 1 killer or 1 survivor at a time, and hopefully using that extra time to then support the game and the game's overall health by, you know, fixing up the bugs, doing some killer tweaks, some perk tweaks, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I will say, and I know this sounds a little silly, but in my heart and in my mind, I wish Behavior would have like a Scooby-Doo chapter of, you know, like the survivor being like Shaggy or something like that, and then the killer could be like any one of the famous killers from any of the movies or whatever. I don't know. In my mind, I feel like that would just be cool.
Yeah, that actually could be interesting. I have heard a few people mention a Scooby-Doo chapter. Would definitely be interesting to see what they might bring in. And it would lead to a lot of different, cool cosmetics from a killer perspective, as long as it's like a generic killer power. You know, you could have the Creeper in there. You could have the sunken, the scuba diver ghost, stuff like that. Like, have all these different cosmetics representing all the monsters of Scooby-Doo. Could be actually a really, really cool thing if in an instance that they ever do decide to do that. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. Would it be cool?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
probably not. Yeah, I would imagine it, and then that's the other beautiful thing as well. It's like even if it's not necessarily like a licensed killer or survivor or anything like that, you know, coming out with just, you know, original characters, you know, that the devs come up with and stuff like that, and different things that they have at least previously come up with as well. You know, just to just see the different ideas that are thrown out there from the developers in terms of like character design, you know, character ability powers, and, you know, things of that nature. I've always thought that was pretty cool. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But with that being said, I do believe we are good to go.
We are.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much for the heads up, and I'll let everyone in the lobby know. And we'll be jumping into game number 2, this time with Deadheads as the killer. And our killer on Deadheads is going to be Baby Cades. So, will be interesting to see what they bring. I am guessing that there's going to be a slug match of nothing but Nurse and Spirit.
Yeah, I would imagine so as well. Cade is a really good killer. He does have a lot of killers up his sleeve, so I wouldn't be surprised to see the Nurse one up and be like, hey, you bring Nurse, I bring Nurse, you know? But he might bring the Spirit as well, so we'll just have to see once we load in.
Indeed, indeed, but it won't be too much longer now, so, you know, we'll have to wait and see. I'm saying Spirit. What about you?
I'm just gonna stick with my gun and say Ghost, or not Ghostface, Nurse.
You know, I don't think we actually have
Ghostface.
seen a Ghostface this entire season, and for good reason. Ghostface, though, honestly one of the best stealth-based killers in the sense that he doesn't have to uncloak for a hit. You know, still is a 115 M1 killer versus Wraith, who has a bit more mobility, but would love to see someone really play a good Ghostface here and there.
That would be nice, and I don't know why I say Ghost to start, but I don't know. But no, Nurse is my pick. Nurse is my pick.
Fair, but everything's looking good on initial build check, but something happened as we did not continue into the match. I get a feeling that maybe we were on the wrong map. We'll have to wait and see what the explanation is there.
Yeah.
Oh, either that or potentially disconnected from host, as we did get kicked out to the main menu, so potentially DBD being DBD. Unfortunately, 'tis a thing that happens all too often.
Yeah, and 'tis something that we referenced earlier that we wish DBD would fix, but yet here we are.
Well, it's hard to say sometimes, you know, sometimes it can be on the fault of DBD. Sometimes your internet just decides to have a moment and kick you offline. So we'll have to figure out what happened here. I imagine Giraffe will give us an update momentarily once we get some more information from the teams. Based on the fact that I do see Baby Cades, though, jumping back on Steam, I get a sense that internet may have gone out and or Steam gave them an error code.
Yeah, potentially, and you hate to see it.
It's unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is, and this will give a chance for the survivors and killers alike to reset their builds if necessary.
Sounds like the killer got kicked kicked a menu.
And
so DBD being DBD.
Always a fun time, always a fun time. So, we'll be restarting the lobby here in just a second, giving the survivors and killer alike to reset their builds as necessary. Obviously, with survivors, we can normally guess what your builds are for the most part. I'm sure they'll shuffle around here and there. As far as killer, maybe give them a few moments to decide if they want to stick with the same killer and build, or change it up just to keep it interesting. So outside of Scooby-Doo, what other licensed IPs would you like to see? I think based on what Behavior said during the 5th anniversary, we were going to get 2 licensed IPs, and you know, obviously some people have thought that Nemesis counted in those 2 with Resident Evil. I do think that it might be a situation where we instead see another one on top of which obviously we had Pinhead and Hellraiser. I think we still see one more. If you had to choose one outside of Scooby-Doo, what's the next one you'd like to see?
It's a good question. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not a huge scary movie person, so I don't know a whole lot of like scary movies or like, you know, things that could be like licensed killers and stuff like that. First thing that I can think of is, I don't know, maybe what's that movie that's been going around recent? Is it like Candyman or something like that?
Candyman, yeah, Candyman was something that Behavior in some ways teased with not Resident Evil, with Hellraiser, where it seemed like they're going to, you know, kind of tease that line of Candyman. And it is interesting because I think one of the actors from the Candyman movie was actually talking about it. It was like, you have to wait and see. So it could be that maybe, you know, they were just kind of being a little bit cheeky there, or maybe there has been conversation to get Candyman in.
Yeah, that would be my first guess, and I know it's a bit of a meme because of like it's been so long now, but Slenderman. That would be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, Slenderman, I would love to see. The unfortunate part about Slenderman is that it is really hard because they were like a creepypasta that was posted to like an image board, more or less. Or not an image board, but a storyboard. So like trying to get the license or rights for that could be quite difficult. So as much as I would love to see Slenderman, I think that'd be wicked cool, it is pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I would agree. It was just something to throw out there. But those would be my 2. Like I said, I don't really watch a whole lot of scary movies or anything like that, so I'm pretty sure a lot of the community and probably people in chat could probably come up with some other good ones as well.
Yeah, I've seen people saying Jason, which I would love to see eventually, but unfortunately, I know that the IP is still held up in litigation in the courts. I think right now, 2 different people who worked on initial movie had basically said, I own the rights to Jason, and the other one saying, no, I do. So I think that's still in court, and then even after that goes through, which was supposed to have ended by now, they then need to go into additional right ownership. So it's going to be a while until we see Jason and DBD.
It would be interesting though if that ever actually does happen later on down the line. That would definitely be a good chapter, I think.
Well, so the question then remains, obviously, like, trappers are knockoff Jason, right? So if they were to include Jason, what do you think his powers would be?
That's a good question. I would imagine they would probably have to maybe come up with something different. Because obviously you don't want to just completely like copy paste.
Oh, thank you for that, Zup. And yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned it, because it wouldn't include bear traps, right? I've heard some people say maybe like puddles of water that you can teleport to, but I feel like that might be too similar to like Demo or to Freddy.
Yeah, so it would have to be, I don't know, almost something unique to an extent, but at the same time it's like, you know, you play that like fine line of giving a licensed killer something completely different from what, you know, they actually do, versus, you know, trying to be different and just giving them that unique power, whatever it might be, kind of thing. And then you know, you kind of get into semantics of things, and it's like, you know, you upset a lot of people who like follow like lore on things, and it's just like, no, and they put the hammer down, and it's just, you know, they shame you for not sticking true to the character or what have you, and then you have the other side where it's just like, no, you didn't give them something cool, something unique, it's just the same rinse repeat kind of thing. It's just like, whichever way you slice it, it seems it's a lose-lose.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I've also seen some people say Terminator. Terminator could be cool. Like, I like the idea
would-
because that'd be one of the first real, like, futuristic killers that we have seen. You know, futuristic in loose terms. Or robotic. Everyone has been, you know, for all intent and purpose, organic in nature. Supernatural, but, you know, still humanoid, where Terminator would be, like, the first real robot. So that could be kind of interesting if we ever did get a Terminator chapter. Not sure if we'll ever get it, but I'm now trying to get the idea in my head of what that would look like.
I would even go for something like RoboCop. One of those would be cool if you're talking futuristic in terms of just like robotics. But it would be cool though if you could get the Terminator to say the in-game voice line of "I'll be back." That would be really, really cool. But obviously, that's just a whole other ballpark.
Yeah, no, I agree. But with that being said, we will be starting up here momentarily. Once again, you know, people switching up builds real quick, just making sure everything's looking good to go. Give him so I'm seeing people say give him killer instinct and stealth. What, Jason or Terminator? Because I could see killer instinct plus stealth could be interesting. Kind of like Spirit in a way. Those Spirit's add-ons or her newer ones kind of give her that ability now, don't they? But, you know, outside of Terminator, outside of that, I think some obvious ones that the community has asked for on a few occasions has been like Alien and Predator, which I'd also love to see. Predator, Predator less so than Alien. I'd actually love to see a Xenomorph and see what that would look like.
That would definitely be an interesting one. I think that would be definitely a good one. Because then they could split it up into two if you really thought about it. You could have one chapter be the Alien, the other chapter be the Predator kind of thing. Kind of milk it, so to speak, if you will, in terms of the money grubbers.
Yeah, would be interesting. I definitely would love that. You know, at the very least, Xenomorph as well as then Ripley as a survivor. I think that'd be a great chapter if we were to ever see it.
I know this one's a bit out there, but it would be funny as heck, or it might be actually pretty hard though. It would be cool though, for like a Star Wars or a Star Trek themed one chapter. I feel like it would be interesting for sure.
I agree with that. But with that being said, let's jump right on in, as I do believe all the builds are good to go.
Yes, builds are good to go.
Thank you. Alright, so we are finally back on in after some technical difficulties with game number 2, Deadheads versus Travesty. This time round, Deadheads on Killer, as we are going to be spawning on the Wretched shop. So, you already saw some really good play from the nurse, really strong 3-gen that the survivors unfortunately did not break earlier on. So, it will be interesting to see here what they decide to do if the survivors, seeing that, might look out for that 3-gen earlier on and try and break it. Will also be interesting, of course, to see what Deadheads brings to the table. If they might respond with a nurse themselves, or, like I said, I'm still thinking that we're going to see some Spirit today, just for the fact that a lot of teams are looking to burn Spirit before the 19th comes around.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. It's still a 50-50 for me on either Nurse or Spirit. My vote is still Nurse, though, I think. But I wouldn't be surprised about the Spirit pick here either.
Absolutely. But with that being said, we are loading right on in. As a reminder, as it has been a hot minute since we have talked about the scores, right now it's 14 points Deadheads to 44 points Travesty. So it's right now a 30-point difference. Deadheads is going to have to make up those 30 points either here in Game 2 or in Game 3. I think their best bet here is to try and get a 4K, even it out, and then take a lead in Game 3. But we'll have to wait and see what comes to be. And let's jump right on in, and we see a Spirit.
Spirit, you were spot on, my man.
I mean, it just makes sense. We've been seeing a lot of spirits recently. I think a lot of teams have been using her just because they want to avoid that nerf coming down the line, because I think it's going to be strong as is in pubs, but come comp play, especially with those with really good headsets and just good game sense, it's going to be really difficult to get some of those phase hits on survivors that you normally would be able to now, where she has a bit more stealth involved.
I would agree, and it almost looks like we caught a bit of a glimpse there, but it seems that the Spirit has 2 different 3 gens. There's the one that they have right here that they're patrolling at the moment, but then there's another one on the other side of the map, it seems.
Yeah, it does seem like some pretty close generators here and there, but Spirit's struggling to find this first survivor, and surprisingly not using their phase walk to maneuver around. A lot of people do forget, but Spirit is a 110 killer without phase walk, where she is moving at a 167 speed. Obviously, it's hard to find them if they're not running in the first place, but in this case, they are just now finding survivors, and we do see some aura readings, some snapshots, which would be indicative of Rancor. So, pretty interesting to see that perk used here. I don't think we've seen Rancor used this season at all. So, very surprising, but it's possible that the, Spirit is going to go for everyone but the Obsession and potentially just try and claim a kill by killing off the Obsession in the end.
I was gonna say, yeah, I would agree. I think that might be the play that they're going for there. It is a bit unfortunate though, as we mentioned, that they did have the 1 gen already be completed before the first hook, but they are able to get the down on the Nancy, and we'll have to see if they choose to go back to their previous 3 gen that they were patrolling.
And it looks like they do, and they do find a survivor there. I'm actually surprised to not see that totem get cleansed. We did see one really close to the generator that the survivors had previously been on. It is possible that they might be afraid of a haunted ground and might be scoping out the remaining totems to determine how many totems are currently in play.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's a very popular pick. Haunted grounds is no matter the killer, but it's, you can obviously make the guess that more spirits than not might have it. So, like you said, it could be just a tactic on the survivors, and they're just wanting to make sure they confirm the build before popping the totem.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a fair play, but it does put them into a really uncomfortable position here, as while they are potentially looking around for those additional totems, are currently off of those gens, and they will be regressing in the meanwhile. And not to mention, with Nancy now being onto second stage, they're definitely going to find themselves into a difficult position, and Spirit here doing a quick little fake phase walk and trying to get a hit on Claudette here. Like we said, this is probably not the chase they're looking for, and just like that, they ignore Claudette and decide to go back to the unhook.
Definitely a bit of a cheeky play there by Cage, but as you said, Nancy's pretty close to death already as she is on death. But as we say that, another gen does pop.
Yeah, so difficult position for the Spirit to be in. Obviously, 1-for-1 on hooks the gens, but if they're able to get this Nancy out early, they're going to be in a fantastic position. But Ace trying desperately to take the body block as he is trying to take aggro from Spirit, but Spirit outright ignoring Nancy, knowing full well that she does not have DS. So she is going to be going for blood and does get the Nancy down. It now is up to the survivors here to somehow save her, whether it be firecracker, flashlight, or otherwise.
Fortunately, they're not able to do so. That is a 3-on-1 with 3 gens left, and so far, and well, no, as I say that, they dropped that chase to head back to this potential 3 gen here.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be playing it pretty safe around these generators, double checking, especially with this, set of 3 generators having Ruin within it. I think that is a really smart heads-up play, because if your survivors are not able to cleanse that, and you have that 3 gen at endgame, if you're just pushing them off little by little, then you're not going to be able to get much gen progress.
Sure, it's like you said, it's little by little that they're pushing them off. But the good thing here, though, well, I was gonna say the good thing here, they were at least able to take the killer to the other side of the map, so it does waste some time, albeit it wasn't as much as the survivors probably would have liked. But they could still have a gen popped almost by now.
Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, it does not take too much time when 2 survivors are on gens, but we know for a fact there's only 1 survivor out and about, as we do see the injured Ace here on this tile. So it's now up to the Claudette to do something about both the unhook, but also trying to finish off a gen. You know, there's only upwards of another 30 seconds, give or take, before that Nia does go to second stage, and looks like Spirit here will be going for the unhook and slugging out the Ace in meanwhile.
Yeah, Cade here is in such a strong position because, as you said, he does go for the slug on the Ace, fakes the chase on the Claudette, and then just goes right back to the Nia. So he's in a really good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now there is that 1 out of 3 chance now of hitting a DS, but I don't think Spirit here is all too concerned about that, as they do get the down on Nia and will attempt to pick her up. Let's see, is DS in play? And unfortunately for Nia, does not appear to be the case.
It's not indeed. And then also, once again, hooked inside of another 3-gen, albeit a different 3-gen from what they were in previously. They are now hooked in the 3-gen. The Ace is fully recovered though, but you still are at 3 gens with very little gen pressure.
Yeah, I think right now, if the Spirit's kind of analyzing the situation, she's realizing, okay, 1 person out, 1 person on death hook, and we have an obsession that is at risk of dying at any point in time with Rancor. So I think she feels very comfortable in the situation and just opting to kind of play where the survivors want to play, and, you know, not really worrying too much about gen progress.
Yeah, because right now it's basically she's forcing the survivor's hand. You know, the survivors have to make the play here. It's either they worry about this ruin, or they just, you know, they're putting themselves in such an unfortunate position because that they were so worried about the ruin.
Yeah, I mean, we even see there Claudette being near that rune again and still not going for that cleanse. You know, I am not sure what the thought process is with the survivors. Maybe they're thinking that the alternative of Pop Goes the Weasel, which is normally paired with Ruin, would be more of a concern than Ruin itself at this moment in time. But we do see Claudette go down on the ground, and this will be her first hook at this point in time.
Yeah, and then that's actually a really good point to bring up as well, because as you said, Pop is usually paired with Ruin, and Pop is obviously, you can't use Pop, you can't get Pop value if Ruin is up. So that could also be their play. The only issue still though is very little gen pressure, 2 different 3-gens, and the chases honestly aren't really lasting super long. But to be fair, Cade is doing a really good job with some of these fakes and the mind games, if you will, of her power.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Spirit's going to miss out on after the 19th, right? Is that she's no longer going to be able to fake a phase walk like Cade has been doing pretty much the entire match. So I think this is why we're seeing teams, you know, bring Spirit more and more often to ensure they can get value out of Spirit in this manner. As we do see Nia go up onto her last hook, though we do see a generator complete. So that'll be another 4 points for Travesty. But at this point in time, things are not looking good, as we also see CBJ move on to second stage, and Ace is now in potentially the final chase.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate that, well, I say unfortunate that the gen was finished, because obviously it let the killer know where they were, but at the same time, you're taking points, you're taking what you can get, and as it stands right now, that's what they're playing for. They're playing for the hatch, they're playing for as many points as they can get. The 2 gens left, it would be safe to say, it's safe to assume here that Deadhead has definitely brought it back with this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But at the same time, if Ace is able to escape here, that would be a huge number of points. But as I say that, Ace does go down and will result in the final hook. So that'll be the first hook for Ace, plus 2 additional progressions. So this here will result in 9 points for Trousty, 44 points for Deadheads. And we are looking at a total of 58 points Deadheads and 53 points for Trousty. So Deadheads did what they needed to do, and they brought this game back within striking distance as they go into game number 3.
And it's honestly, it's not surprising that it's close because it's literally a 1 generator's difference at the moment. Because you had the 4K at 1 gen left from the first game, and then now you have a 4K at 2 gen left. So it's quite literally a really close game at the moment. So Deadheads, good on you for bringing it back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with that being said, Deadheads will continue as killer here as we do move on to Suffocation Pit. Very similar type of play style. You're really focused in on those 3 gens as you do have that bottleneck in the middle. So it's going to be up to survivors once again to break those 3 gens early. And I think that they might change up their strategy here. And I foresee if Ruin is in play, probably it's going to be quickly cleansed if at all possible.
Yeah, I would probably agree there as well. It's just going to be a difficult bounce back because, I mean, obviously now they're going to have to swap killers, so obviously that kind of changes things a little bit in terms of like playstyling and how you're looping certain killers and what have you. But it's going to be Travesty here is a bit of a tall order, I would say, especially considering the game that just happened.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be psychological here as well. You know, as you mentioned, that game was probably pretty rough on Travesty, all things considered. So they're probably going to have to recollect, think of what they're going to do, what type of strategy they're going to utilize. I do want to mention there, you know, as we did see Rancor, really interesting perk to see. What are your thoughts on using that in comp? It's definitely not something that we see very often.
Definitely not. I think it depends. I think it more so kind of depends on like the tournament style that you're in. So like if you're able to get and confirm a kill in the end game, should it obviously go to the end, of course, you know, then you're basically almost guaranteed a kill and extra points, you know, or the points that come with that. It was very clear, at least in my mind, that this was a good use of Rancor because he came in with that mindset of, okay, I'm not even going to bother chasing the Claudette. And obviously he did end up chasing the Claudette, but it was more so toward the end game that he ended up committing to it. So technically, quote unquote, didn't really get Rancor value in that aspect, but it's still the threat of the Rancor being a thing, whereas, you know, he came in with that, I'm not going to bother with her, I'm going to get everyone else, she's going to be the last one alive, she's not going to be able to last and chase very long because she's exposed. You know? So It's like, she has to, the survivor is then put in so much pressure onto them because of that one thing alone. So in my opinion, this was a good use.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see if we see more Rancor usage. You know, as we've seen slow but surely as the season goes on, more No Way Out. You know, maybe we also see Rancor and where, you know, killers really focus down the non-obsessions early on. That way they can try and get as much Rancor value in the end. Obviously, there's some risk versus reward because obviously the obsession knows that Rancor is in play. But still, quite difficult to play around in some unique scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also bring in the fact that, again, like you mentioned, No Way Out to pair it with. You know, you get a good amount of stacks on No Way Out, and it kind of almost creates chaos at the end game because it's like, oh crap, we can't open the exit gate. We now have to try to either hide it out, or we have to basically, you know, try as best we can to loop the killer and waste their time. because it just buys so. It's similar to Corrupt Intervention in my opinion, because it's Corrupt Intervention is so much help and pressure like early game and early game setup for the killer, whereas No Way Out is the opposite of just it being in the end game. It helps the end game for the killers so much.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think we're definitely going to see No Way Out used more and more. Also has been mentioned in chat that Rancor gives info that you can see mid-phase versus things like Bitter Murmur. When in phase, you cannot see anything from aura reading abilities and or perks, where if Rancor, you are able to get that snapshot of, the survivor's location. So that actually is pretty significant to get info even while you're mid-chase, while phasing, or while you're facing, across the map, just because you have an inclination where survivors might be.
That's actually been an interesting point as well. I honestly didn't even know that. I assumed it worked in the same sense of like Bitter Murmur, but knowing that, that's actually a really, really good advantage there. Well, as you mentioned, obviously, specifically more for Spirit because of, being mid-chase or mid-power, if you will. But that's definitely something to think about, Like you said, killers might be more inclined to bring Rancor.
Yep, absolutely. But especially with Spirit, kind of thinking about it, Spirit used to run, sometimes people would run Strider, because it does give you a little bit of advantage when it comes to audio and breathing of survivors. So, there was that thought that with Strider now gone, it does allow that fourth perk slot to be freed up quite significantly, whether that be for No Way Out, Sloppy Butcher, Rancor, or otherwise. So definitely interesting to see what Spirit players end up using in place of Strider.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting for sure.
With that being said, we are ready to go, and we're jumping into game number 3. Once again, Deadheads as Killer and Travesty as Survivor, this time on Suffocation Pit. The point difference between the two is currently only 5 points. So this is anyone's game going into game number 3, as this will determine who is on their heels going on to game number 4. And I think if Deadheads can come up ahead here, it's going to put Travesty's Killer into a really, really pressure-filled situation where you never want to be trying to make up points as the killer.
Yeah, and that was something that I completely forgot to mention as well. It's a very valid thing that they have to consider now. Like, they have to play very, very tough this game to bring it back, so it relieves the pressure from their killer.
And absolutely, and we do see another nurse. Like I said, I felt that this match is going to be a slugfest, and it looks to be the case, as we do see Nurse checking across this side on Suffopit and finds Nia and gets a really, really nasty down there. Honestly, I saw them swing, and I kind of questioned it for a second, going, wait a second, why are you swinging so far away? But it still managed to connect, and I guess that's what matters in the long run.
Yeah, that is such a very quick down. My goodness, that honestly just kind of sets the tone for this game, realistically.
Yeah, and when it comes to Suffopit, you kind of want to just sit in your 3-gen and call it a day. Though Nurse is opting to venture a little bit out into that middle area. So, surprised to see that. At the same time, if they're able to just keep that hook in the back of that 3-gen, it'll be pretty much game over. But we do see scratch marks all the way to the hook, and there's the unhook notification. Question is, will Nurse now go for the Nia, or will they opt to go for the unhooker? It looks like they found Nia, and there's the second blink. No hit, though. They were right on top of them. Surprised they didn't go for the swing. And as we see here, trying to track down these scratch marks, and they attempt to get a burn on the nurse there of the firecracker, but was not successful, and they somehow managed to get that Nia in the locker. Question is, does she have Decisive Strike? And she does, but this does mean now that there are no more Decisive Strikes in the match for the nurse to worry about, so that is actually quite significant for them to get out before Corrupt Intervention is even over.
This, honestly, so far, for Deadhead's case, this match could not have gone better. and could not have started better. You can argue right now at this moment that literally everything is going their way. Because as you said, Decisive Strike is gone now. So many quick chases so far and quick downs and everything. So much has gone on in this short span, even though as we see these gens being done, it almost feels as if Deadheads cannot lose this almost.
Though I'd agree with you, I also disagree in the sense that, you know, though the initial chase was pretty short and they were able to get that grab at the locker, that's now 3 generators completed before another hook has been done, because Cades has been going after this Nia, who went from 0 to hero and was able to evade the nurse for quite a long while. Unfortunately, Cades getting a little bit of tunnel vision on Survivor, but looks like these Survivors are a lot more comfortable playing against Nurse than they were against Spirit.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if this ends up kind of coming back to bite him a little bit, although he still is in a good spot at the moment. We're just gonna have to see how this plays out.
I mean, I don't think so. I think if we're looking at the situation at hand, they're actually in a really difficult position. That's already 3 gens completed. If we take a look at the generators that have been completed, they did break the really good 3-gen on the opposite side. So they're going to have to pressure Shack side, which is a much looser 3-gen in comparison to work with.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly the pendulum swung. Because like I said just a little bit ago, it almost felt as if Deadhead could not lose this game because everything was going so far in their favor. That as of right now, it's completely swung the other direction, and Deadhead could very much, you know, lose a lot of points based off of this.
Yeah, that is definitely a concern, because if things keep up in this way and Travesty's able to get one of their gens in that 3-gen area, you know, that will spell disaster for Deadheads here as they go into game number 4. And Cade just ever so slightly over blinking again and again. We do see that 4th gen go off. They just now need to break that 3-gen and it will be game over. But they are able to get the Nancy down.
Yeah, but as of right now, it's like at what cost, though? You're able to get the Survivor now, but at what cost?
And that's the thing. We see that Ruin is still up and running. No totems have been cleansed. So the question then remains if Ruin's going to be enough on that 3-gen. This type of situation where the killer kind of would like to have pop and regress it by 20 seconds at a time in a 3-gen, because that allows you to regress a little bit more heavily, focus in on the, you know, most completed gen, or the gen with the most progression, versus only being able to chase off one survivor at a time, because as you go into another chase, a survivor's just going to replace them that quickly. So what are your thoughts here, Joker, on the current state of the game? Do you know, before you had a good opinion of where the killer was, but do you still hold that to be true in this situation here?
Honestly, no. Honestly, no. They might be in an okay spot right now. As I say that, of course, the unhook does come through. Timing, of course. But I think if they're able to get at least one confirmed kill and a down, that they might be able to bring this back. However, it is seeming very unlikely that that will happen. So as of right now, Cade and Deadhead are definitely on their heels.
Yeah, I think especially if Ruin's still up, there's one of those situations where you don't want Ruin to be up any longer, because, you know, you're not going to get a lot of regression here. It's going to be that little bit of regression when a survivor jumps off the gen, but as soon as you go into a chase, another survivor's going to replace them. And as long as those survivors rinse, repeat, and play this safe, you know, they're just going to slowly but surely eke out another generator. And even if Cade were to sit on the gen, they still would then have to worry about the other 2 gens that the survivors are most likely on.
Yeah, and it's like you said, because of the fact that they broke that strong 3-gen at the very beginning of the game, while he was in chase with the Nancy, it's honestly kind of turned the tide. Oh, nice pallet stun on the nurse. Very rare occurrence there. But anyway, as I was saying, it puts them in a really good spot now because they don't have to worry about that strong 3-2.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not looking good here. Cade's gonna have to think of something, but as soon as we say that, that last gen pops off. And right now, Travesty is primed and ready for a potential 4-man out, with Cade only having 2 hooks here. That amount of points going into Travesty's favor, if they are able to successfully do this, would be backbreaking for Deadheads. We see the other exit gates open up. And though a nurse is hard to body block, it is not impossible, as we do see her attempting to get the Nancy down, but just barely getting that hit. Is now up to survivors to either go for the 3-man out or just attempt for the 4-man. And looks like Nurse is going to force these survivors out, and that will be all 3. Let's see what becomes of the Nancy.
That almost got really scary really quickly for for Deadheads and for Cade there. And I'm not gonna say that Cade panicked necessarily or anything like that, because obviously he might not have panicked or anything like that, but it is a tad unfortunate that the game played out this way, considering how.
And at the end of that, we're looking at 38 points for Travesty, 15 points for Deadheads. Total points at the end of that, Deadheads 73, Travesty 91. So it's not as if Travesty got that much of a lead, but enough of a lead for their killer to feel a little bit more comfortable, right? If they either get a 6-hook 2K or better, I mean, that's going to be the game in Travesty's favor.
Yeah, and that's kind of everything at the moment right now, as you mentioned, because it just their killer now kind of a little bit more lax. They don't feel that much pressure on them now, and it's like as you mentioned, they get the 2K 6-hook game that they're looking for, and that secures the win. So I mean, realistically speaking, you don't even have to bring out an S-tier killer, an A-tier killer, probably more so maybe an A-tier killer here, I would imagine, but you potentially don't have to burn one of those S-tier killer games.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think in this instance, you could very well go for, Bubba, go for Pyramid Head, and just kind of play around your 3 gens and allow them to get those first 4 and say, okay, cool, come at me now. What you gonna do?
Right, so now it's pretty much up to the Deadhead survivors to bring it back. You had a really, you had a decent performance from them in the first game as Survivor, and then you had obviously a really, really strong rebuttal from Cade. An unfortunate continuation here in this game 3, and now this kind of brings us to the closure of this this series, if you will. Now it's in the survivors' hands. How do they play it?
Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, you're just aiming for that 4-man out to try and get as many points as possible. But if we want to talk about cutting it close, at the very least, Deadheads will need a 4-man out while also giving the killer 8 hooks, and that would end up in a draw. So at the very least, that is what the killer and survivors need to do to avoid losing on either side. The moment that one survivor dies, that is when Deadhead loses without question. So it's going to be really, really close here to see, what Deadheads ends up doing, because if they just spread out the hook states and ensure that the killer just can't kill anyone, then, that will at least give them the win, or at the very least, the draw.
Yeah, then it begs the question, again, it just begs the question of what's going to happen in game. How do they play it? Because should the killer choose to do that and choose to just, tunnel vision on one specific survivor alone, are they going to be super altruistic and, try to get the body blocks and try to help make sure that the hooks don't go down, and that means obviously usually less gen pressure, less people on gens, all this and that, or it just gonna, how do they play it is the big question here.
And I think it also depends on what killer they're playing against, right? Obviously, you can't really go for body blocks. You're playing against a Bubba, or even a Pyramid for that matter. At the same time, Chastity might be of the mindset of, cool, 19th coming up quick, let's run Spirit, right? I would not be surprised if we just see Spirit here, and for them to just go for the throw and ensure their victory.
Yeah, they could also pull that out. I would not be surprised. You know, just play your hand while you can and get it in.
Yeah, it would make sense to me. With that being said, you know, we do have another match coming up after this one. Want to give everyone a quick heads up, as that will be our 10 p.m. match of 4 Dwights 1 Locker versus Milkshake Mafia. So, Joker, can you give us a little insight about what you guys are going to be thinking of? Obviously, you guys are all watching this match unfold. Do you have any feedback or things that you're going to bring back to the team before the start of your match?
I'll probably have a few things to bring out of this for sure. Obviously, it's kind of given the things of like what's happened with the team and stuff. It's going to be kind of difficult, and obviously we're going to need to kind of bounce back, sort of, if you will. But it's going to be interesting. We're obviously, you know, going to give it our best. Obviously, a lot of people probably view us as a bit of a meme or throw team, or, you know, just bad players or what have you. But we're just gonna give it our best, man.
Yeah, no, makes sense, makes sense. I was more referring to like what we're seeing with the maps, you know, a lot of 3 gens, kind of how you're gonna break, you have to stay out of line of sight of those killers, but good insight nonetheless.
Okay. Fair enough. I think it's always going to be difficult. It's always, at least in my mind, early game, that you try to find the 3 gens or the 4 gens and stuff like that, and you have different ways. A lot of teams, I feel, and we do as well, of trying to attack those 3 gens and those 4 gens, and a lot of it also does depend on the killer that we happen to come across.
Yeah, no, that is a fair point. You know, sometimes with certain killers, it can be a little bit more aggressive than some others. Obviously, with that nurse and the 3 gen that we saw in the game number 1, really hard to work around nurse who's just able to travel 20 meters at a time. So can definitely understand that. Versus a Bubba where you have a little bit more leeway. You can kind of tell when he's about to be on your back with that chainsaw.
Yeah, so like I said, it kind of in that retrospect, it kind of just depends on the killer. Each killer is different, obviously, and some you can kind of play a bit similar in terms of how you want to attack the 3 gens or how you're looping them in chases and stuff like that. Because some killers you can kind of greed pallets a little bit. Others it's just like no greeding pallets. Ensure that you're safe in chase, buy as much time as possible, kind of thing. So it just, you know, you got to kind of weigh your options, and it's kind of like an in-the-moment kind of decision sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fair. But that being said, we are getting the lobby up and running as we speak. And we will be jumping into game number 4 of Travesty versus Deadheads here momentarily on Suffocation Pit. And it's a close game, I think, you know, versus a lot of game 4s where it is kind of, you know, a situation where the killer has to get X amount of kills. This is kind of an opposite situation where the killer just really needs to ensure that the survivors don't escape, but can still have some leeway to work with. You know, if an instance, like I said, 4 survivors escape, as long as they get 8 hooks, they're good. But if they're able to get, let's say, 3 survivors escape, and they're able to get just another 3 hooks. So if they kill off 1 killer and get 3 hooks, it doesn't matter who on, they then win the match in that moment. So that's the minimum amount of effort that the killer needs to put in for all intent and purpose.
And it's honestly, I think it's going to be tough for Deadheads here because realistically speaking, you usually don't see a lot of killers have really bad games like that. Or what games that you would consider really bad, you know. I mean, obviously it can still happen, of course, but it's usually kind of a rare sight to see because usually some killers are able to just apply so much pressure on the map, or some people are just able to give that consistent pressure whoever they're playing as, kind of thing, where it makes it really difficult for the survivors.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's very much possible. I don't think that it's an impossible task for the survivors to avoid that many hooks. And like I said, it just comes down to ensuring that the last person does not die. And if you can ensure that, then I think you're in a good spot, because if no one dies, the killer needs 8 hooks. If one person dies, the killer just needs an additional 3. So it's going to be very swingy, and depends on what the killer wants to do. If the killer, with this knowledge now, wants to face camp and get that first person out, then, you know, that's fair game. And they just need 3 additional hooks. But if the survivors play smart in that moment and just crank out gens, then that could potentially result in, you know, the last 3 survivors escaping with no hooks on them. So it's going to be interesting to see how both sides play with this knowledge now, and, you know, what their strategy is going to be in the long run.
So we realistically just gotta wait to see what happens.
Indeed, indeed. But I do believe we have all the builds in. Let me just get confirmation from Giraffe.
We are missing one from the last person who had the reset their game.
No worries, no worries. As always, DVD being DVD, so sometimes resets are better safe than sorry to avoid any situations like DCs. And I see chat mentioning how sometimes this map can even get some 5 gens, which, though true, would be quite unlucky for the survivors. I'm sure they're holding their breath and just hoping that won't come to fruition.
Yeah, I have also come across so many games, like my fair share of games as a survivor with that, and I'm just like, bruh, come on, man. Like, this is such a nasty gen spread for the killer. It's just like, it's almost like a slap in the face, because it's like, what are we supposed to do, man? Because even like, if you put a 5 gen, even against, like, you could argue the worst killers in the game, they can just do so much with it at that point. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I remember in scrims with sample text, I actually was on Gas 7 of Bubba, ended up with 2 back-to-back 3 gens, and when I looked around, when I got someone down to my corrupt intervention, I looked around and went, huh, I can see 3 gens from right here. Alright, I think I'm just gonna sit here, face cam at Bubba, this is gonna be perfectly fine. Then after they died, I went and hooked another person, looked around again, went, oh, I have another 3 gen here. Okay, perfect. Alright, so we'll just camp out, call it a day, and, like, if I ever get that type of gen layout in an actual comp match, I'll be so happy.
I can agree with you there. I don't think you as a killer can look at that and not be happy, to be honest.
Exactly.
Because at that point, it's just like, is it my birthday? Is this Christmas? Like, well, what is this?
Yeah, sounds about right. And it's kind of like, okay, you know, can't complain of them results, so let's just face camp, get someone out, and pressure survivors off of gens here and there, especially while ruin up. So we'll have to wait and see if survivors get that unlucky here. I'm sure they're hoping for, you know, that 3 gen split and that 1 gen in the middle, and hopefully they're not too close together, and I'm sure they'll be quite happy with them results on this map.
Yeah, I would think so as well.
Yeah, but we are jumping into this last match here, where we have Travesty as the killer, Deadheads as survivor. Like we said, point difference right now is 73 Deadheads, 91 Travesty. And right now it comes down to either Travesty getting the 4-man out, or Deadheads getting the 4-man out, or Travesty getting that 1 kill and 3 additional hooks for the win. And we see a Huntress.
Huntress. Very interesting rebuttal here, but yeah, like I said, like Huntress, this map is obviously very good for her, at least in my opinion. Obviously, the middle of the map is just annoying to deal with as any killer, but there are a lot of like long sidelines on this map, and as we see already, they've already found a survivor, so it's already starting good. But it looks like it's a 4 gen on this one side of the map. Near the main building.
I am definitely surprised to see Huntress used in this moment. Would have thought we would have seen a, you know, S or A tier killer. And some people will argue that Huntress in comp is A tier. But with that being said, you know, this is a really good first hook for the Huntress, and has identified that there's another survivor nearby, and they still have a full another minute on Corrupted Invention with all the gens outside of this side of the map corrupted. So they can theoretically sit here for that full first minute and confirm that second stage. And I think that's exactly what Spooky Joe's gonna do.
What you didn't want to have happen for Deadheads happened.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky situation for Deadheads now, and they're going to have to make some choices. And I think what they're doing here, working on this gen, is definitely the right move, just slowly but surely eking out pressure. And I'm sure that there are other survivors on those other gens that we can't really see from this hook's position that are just slowly but surely squeaking out some pressure, because if they don't here, they're going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, and again, it's also the survivor's point. It's like, what do they do here? Do they try to make sure that second stage doesn't get hit, or you know, do they just have to leave him on the hook, let him hit second, and then go from there?
I mean, I think in this instance, you just work on gens, and I think that's exactly what the survivors have started to do. Though, I will say, as we once again see that gen pop off, that is Rancor in play, as we saw those snapshot auras. But Huntress is just going to sit here at the hook, confirm the kill. But I do want to notice, once again, I think we might be seeing camaraderie, as the second state is taking a little bit longer than normal. It
is, and kind of a bit of an unlucky draw, if you will, for the killer to once again get the person with camaraderie first on hook, and they end up, of course, you know, being within proximity, but with it being proc. But so far, it's you got two hurt, you just down the Nia. The killer's still in a really good spot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, she can sit here, take her time, watch the 3-gen, and I think that's what this fire should do, is now just heal up, get on gens, and allow the Huntress to potentially camp this out. I think that being too aggressive on these unhooks is going to be what will cost you the match. And, you know, Moody Joe just trying to, you know, like I said, kill off that first survivor, get their 3 additional hooks, and call it a day.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, the killer here could quite literally just sit here and do this for every single survivor, and if I'm not mistaken, he could almost win off of that.
Yeah, but as we see, you know, some of these gens are definitely going to be hard to defend. They have to kind of go out a little bit. As we see the Claudette working on the opposite side, and that potentially gives the survivors an opportunity to go for that unhook. I think if they call that out, that could be pretty huge, and would be really beneficial to them if they are able to break that 3-gen. But Harley Quinn will go to second stage here, and so that's now 2 survivors on Death Hook, and they'll opt to bop the gen and get it regressing by 0.3% per second. Not that significant, but as they have no real gen regression, it would seem, more than nothing, I suppose.
Yeah, it is better than nothing. It's better than just letting it sit there at its, you know, almost currently done progress. So, as a killer, he's still in a really good spot, even with this 1-gen being done here. They are getting the gens done, though. The still issue that they have, though, is if Harley dies here, that kind of puts them in a really, really, really tough spot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Even more so than what they already were in.
It's going to be a tricky situation, and does look like Harley will die on hook. And so right now we're looking at 82 points for Deadheads, 108 for Travesty. If an instance that they were able to get the next 2 generators and a 3-man out, they'd still be able to win. But if Leon goes down here, which he does, that there will lock up the match. And unfortunately at this point in time, there's no way for Deadheads to win.
And yeah, that was extremely unfortunate that the very next person he found was the on-dead hook, Leon.
Yeah, and so that there will be pretty much the end of the match, and now the Spires are just kind of playing for their pride, seeing how many they might be able to get out.
Yeah, playing for points, playing for pride. See how long you can loop the killer, kind of thing. Kind of a lose-lose situation here for them.
Exactly. And I mean, they did some pretty good work on the gens. It's just so unfortunate the gen setup on this map. You know, Spooky Joe is just able to sit there and really take their time and make sure that everyone went to second stage on first hook and then, you know, kill them thereafter.
Yeah, and it's funny enough that you mentioned a 5-gen because we almost kind of got a 5-gen on this map. It was a 4-gen. So, I mean, the killer, you really couldn't have asked for more. Like, the RNG that they ended up getting was, oh, SBC had nice snipe there on the Claudette.
Yeah, really good hit overall, and just amazing plays from Spooky Joe here. You know, obviously, as what was mentioned in chat, they are a Huntress main, so it makes sense to be playing as well as they are, and not really missing any shots with the Survivor in line of sight. And at this point in time, you know, you can give the Survivor the hatch if you really want to, and it looks like Spooky Joe's just going to opt to sit here in front of the hook and just say, okay, you guys have fun, go finish out your second gen. And as we did see, Rancor finishing out that last gen would actually put Kate into exposed status effect and then Moriable on top of which.
Right, yeah, and that's also, I think, what makes Rancor a very interesting, like, perk to run, especially in a comp setting, because it's something we don't normally get to see. And then on top of that, if they are able, excuse me, to get value off of it and be able to like Mori someone, we're able to see it on stream.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting. I think our first Mori of Champions of the Fog, funny enough. So we'll prove to be maybe the first of Champions of the Fog here, but we do see Poppy Myers move on to second stage, which has been a trend for these survivors. And Spooky Joe looking around for Kate, but not able to do so. And we do see Poppy Myers get off of the hook, so that would give us an inclination to where Kate is. And we are now into another chase.
Yep, and this is just I almost feel bad for Deadheads, and in a sense I do, because it's like you had a great start, especially after the rebuttal game from Cade on Killer, and then you know a less than ideal ending to game 3, and then to get this gen spread with what ended up happening here is just really unfortunate for them.
Yeah, it definitely is unfortunate, but hey, they played their best, and that there is what matters. And Travesty brought their A game as well, so GG's well played all around, no matter what the results may be. But looks like Spooky Joe really wants that 4K, you know, at this point the game is over, but they're like, no, no, no. We're still going to get that Mori, don't you worry, don't you worry.
Give the people what they want, Spooky Joe. Give us the Mori.
The hard part is that Rancor, I believe, will only activate if the last gen is completed, not when the exit are simply powered. So they will have to actually let Kate potentially finish this last gen before attempting to go for the Mori.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're in this particular predicament as well, because it's just like everyone probably just chomping at the bits, like, yes, we get to see our first Mori, and then it's just like, oh, but this is what we're doing right now. It's a slugfest, and then just trying to see where the Kate is.
I mean, that is comp in a nutshell. We do see that last gen go off, and we saw a snapshot on the opposite side of the map. So it will potentially come to fruition. It now just matters on whether or not Spooky Joe is going to be able to find the Kate prior to the opening of the exit gates or not.
Now the real hunt is on.
It is, and I mean, at the end of the day, Poppy Myers is currently bleeding out, has only 2 minutes left on the ground, and these exit gates are not exactly what I refer to as kind to the survivors, as Spooky Joe is able to see them from one end to the other without much of an issue.
Yeah, and it obviously makes it that much better because he is playing a ranged killer such as the Huntress, because then he literally can just be able to snipe, from distance.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Maybe we'll try and see some silent open attempts, but it's gonna be quite difficult to make that. So maybe even see Poppy Myers, get picked up at this point, right? EGC has not been activated. So it is within the realm possibility that Kate might go for the pickup, and then afterwards, make an attempt on each door.
True, and it would be a really, really good play by them if they were to be able to pull that off.
And now we see Poppy Myers with only 1 minute left on the ground. As soon as they bleed out, that hatch will open. We'll see if Spooky Joe is keen on that idea, because it's potentially what Kate is trying to wait for here, and just opting to wait and wait and wait for the hatch to open upon Poppy Myers' death, which will not give them any points, mind you. Or at least any additional points.
Right, I was gonna say, it wouldn't give them any additional points, but you would have to think, after seeing where the exit gates are and right around where the lullaby was heard frequently from, that you can almost guarantee from the survivor side, from Kate's perspective here, that this Huntress knows where Hatch is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they went around looking for Myers, but was not able to not able to happen. And we do see No Way Out activate. And unfortunately for Kate, that will give the Huntress all the information that she needs. And now we'll be on the hunt for the Mori as Myers does die on the ground.
I think had No Way Out not been in play here, it definitely would have probably been a bit different. That the Kate here probably would have been able to get out, but that notification really just kind of sealed it, and I believe we get what we want here, chat. Give it to us. Give it to us.
I'm just trying to find the ideal location, and this here will be the Kate's grave, as the Huntress will Mori her. So, gain some Raincore value there. But with that being said, GG, well played to both teams, and congratulations on the win to Travesty. Final points for that match, 93 for Deadheads, 129 for Travesty. So GG, well played all around.
Indeed.
But with that being said, we will be ending the stream here, as we actually have to prepare for our next match of Forward White Swan Locker versus Milkshake Mafia. So definitely make sure to stop on by and say hi. We'll be live again in 23 minutes. So, Joker, before we go, where could chat find you if they did want to go say hi next time you are live?
It will be usually streaming during the week on twitch.tv/j0k3rax400. Yes, I know it's a little bit of a tongue twister and a bit weird to say, but that is again twitch.tv/j0k3rax400.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, as always, guys, I am Mark, aka Giltspire. Not only am I your commissioner and primary host, but I'm also an educational Dead by Daylight player, here to teach ghosts how to play killer and survivors how to play against killer. So definitely make sure and stop by and say hi next time that I am live, Monday at 7 p.m. CST. Well, on that note, guys, we'll see you in just a little bit for Forts and Lockers versus Milkshake Mafia. Bye-bye!